Imagine returning from a business trip, expecting the usual comfort of home, only to find everything you knew shattered in an instant. The house you once called home? Gone. The man you trusted, already moved on, without warning. How far would you go to protect what's yours when the world you knew is turned upside down? Ben's fists clenched as the thought of waiting gnawed at him. Every minute that ticked by felt like an eternity. He couldn't stand the thought of sitting idly by while Jane basked in her infidelity, seemingly unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. He couldn't let her have what was his. Not the house, not the savings. Certainly not the future they had once planned together. His lawyer, Michael, caught his eye across the table. "You have two choices, Ben," Michael said, his voice steady but firm. "You can wait and let Jane come back and take her time, or you can act quickly and protect what matters most to you." Ben's stomach churned at the first option, and his response came tight, almost a growl. "What do you suggest?" Michael didn't hesitate. "We protect the savings. You've worked too hard to let her walk away with a dime of it." Ben's heart skipped a beat. His primary concern was always the down payment they had saved together, but now it was a matter of principle. It was his money too. He wasn't about to let Jane take a cent, especially after everything that had happened. Michael nodded, his expression unwavering. "We move swiftly but discreetly. Once the funds are secure, we file for divorce. She returns to find her options limited, and you're already ahead of the game." Ben leaned in, absorbing every word, the plan unfolding with clarity. The relief he felt was immediate, but it was mixed with resolve. The lawyer's plan gave him a sense of control, something he hadn't felt in a long time. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Ben spent his evenings combing through their finances, following Michael's instructions to the letter. With every transfer, he felt a strange satisfaction, a feeling of reclaiming something that had been taken from him. Each careful step felt like a new chapter, one that didn't include Jane. By the end of the week, the divorce papers were drawn up. The savings were secure in a separate account, out of Jane's reach. All that was left was the waiting. And Ben hated every second of it. When Jane stepped out of the taxi, she felt like she was floating. The business trip had been everything she needed: sun, relaxation, and a taste of freedom she hadn't felt in years. The beach, the late nights, the laughter of her colleagues, everything had been perfect, or so she thought. Her feet hit the pavement as she walked toward her home, and it didn't take long for her to notice something odd. There was a car in the driveway, a car she didn't recognize. It didn't belong to Ben. Shrugging it off as a friend of his, Jane reached into her purse for the keys. But before she could unlock the door, it swung open. Standing there was a woman, mid-30s, with a warm, almost pitying smile. And beside her, a young boy around 10, clutching a basketball under one arm. The woman's gaze was calm, steady, but there was something in her eyes that made Jane's heart skip a beat. "Excuse me, who are you?" Jane asked, forcing a polite smile, her confusion deepening by the second. The woman's smile widened, her voice smooth. "Oh, you must be Jane. Ben mentioned you'd be picking up your things. I'm Dana, and this is my son, Lucas. We just moved in." The words hit Jane like a ton of bricks. "Moved in?" she croaked, her mouth dry as she processed what the woman was saying. "What do you mean you moved in?" Dana's expression softened as she spoke, her voice light yet firm. "Ben didn't tell you? We've been working out the details for the past week. He was thoughtful enough to make sure everything was ready for us. It's such a beautiful place. Lucas and I are going to love it here. I'm just here to make sure everything's cozy for him." The shock of it all left Jane speechless. She stumbled back, her suitcase hitting the porch with a dull thud. She couldn't grasp what was happening. This was her home, her and Ben's. How could it be someone else's now? Her mind raced as she grabbed her phone, dialing Ben's number in a daze. But when his voice finally answered, it was nothing like she expected. "Ben?" Her voice shook. "What is going on? I come home and there's someone else in my house with her kid. What is this?" Ben's response was cold, too calm. "Jane, I ended the lease. The house belongs to Dana and her son now. I thought it was time for a clean break." Jane's stomach dropped. But why? Why would you do this?" His voice was as steady as ever. "Your things are in the garage. Dana was kind enough to keep them there until you returned. Oh, and there's a folder in the car with the divorce papers. You can sign them whenever you're ready. I'll see you in court." The line clicked before Jane could respond. She tried calling back, but the calls went unanswered. He had blocked her. Standing in stunned silence, Jane's world crumbled around her. She could hardly breathe as the full weight of the situation hit her. She was standing on the porch of the house she had thought was hers, with her things packed up and divorce papers waiting for her. It was a cruel ending to a story she never saw coming. Dana, who had watched the whole scene unfold with an almost sympathetic look, stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Jane's shoulder. "I'm really sorry you're going through this," Dana said softly. "Your things are in the garage. I hope you find what you need." With tears streaming down her face, Jane didn't respond. She couldn't. She picked up the folder, her hand shaking, and walked toward the garage. Her heart was in pieces, each step heavier than the last. Inside, she found her things hastily packed in boxes. The divorce papers sat on the passenger seat of her car, mocking her with their cold finality. 5 days later, Ben sat in a courthouse, facing the woman he had once called his wife. The tension between them was palpable, each of them already knowing that their lives would never be the same. The proceedings barely began, but Jane's fury was evident. She lashed out at him, throwing accusations and insults in his direction, trying to paint him as the villain. But Ben didn't rise to the bait. He had prepared for this moment. His lawyer had told him to stay calm, to not respond to her anger. Her words slid off him like water off a duck's back. He had one goal: his future. By the end of the hearing, Ben felt emotionally drained, but he was resolute. It was over. There was no going back. That evening, he met up with some old college friends at a bar, trying to take his mind off the chaos. As they caught up, Ben kept the details of his divorce vague, offering only that it was complicated and irreconcilable differences. His friends didn't push. They respected his privacy, sharing stories and laughter, but Ben could barely concentrate on the conversation. Ryan, one of his old friends, excused himself to the restroom, and as he left, Ben couldn't help but notice how tanned Ryan looked, unnaturally so. Grinning, Ben turned to John, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Hey, what's up with Ryan? Looks like he's fresh out of a tanning bed or something." But as they laughed, Ben felt a shift inside him. Maybe the life he was starting now wasn't the one he had imagined. Maybe it was better. In the days that followed, Ben began to piece together what his new life would look like. The house, once shared with Jane, was no longer his home. But as he settled into this new existence with Dana and Lucas, he found a strange comfort. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was a chance at something different. As Dana entered the room one evening, she glanced at him with a quiet understanding. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. Ben nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope, of something new. "Yeah," he said, his voice low but firm. "Maybe this is the fresh start I needed after all." Sometimes life hits us with unexpected blows. Betrayal, pain, and loss can leave us feeling broken. But, like Ben, we can rebuild. Sometimes the things we fear most, the changes we resist, are the very things that set us free.